Hello everybody, I'm Dennis Prager and this is the Passover Seder from my home in a very, very strange situation. As you all know, you're all living it as I am living it. We are all isolated in our homes. And that's the reason that I'm doing this. Normally I would just be having a Seder with friends. I'll tell you about that in a moment because I've had the Passover Seder with the same couples for about 25 years. One of the members of one of those couples will actually be with me from his home, and I'll introduce him momentarily. So let me give you a little background here about what this is. Some of you are well aware of what a Passover Seder is. Some of you have never attended one, seen one, or maybe ever even heard of one. And I appreciate all of you being in. This is my way of giving those of you who might not have one a chance to experience it. Obviously, I've never done this before. I hope never to have to do it again. But that is life, and we have to react positively, even to difficult things that happen. And this is a difficult time. There's no question about it. So if you're alone, I'm particularly happy to be in your life for the next hour and a half or so. And if you are with somebody, obviously, I'm happy to be with the two of you, or however many are in self-isolation with you. So let me explain what this is. Seder actually means order. That's all it means, order. In fact, some of you who have ever been to Israel have undoubtedly heard, if you've heard any word, it's beseder. And beseder means in order, which is the Israeli way of saying okay. So Seder is still in the active Hebrew language, and it means order. I will show you what that is because there's an order to the Seder. There are specific things that you do in order, and I will explain each of them, and I will be doing them with you. A very big thing about this is to understand, and those of you who are not Jewish will find this particularly interesting. The central religious place in Jewish life is not the synagogue. Synagogue is quite important, but it is not the central religious place. The central religious place in Judaism is the home. And that is where the holidays are spent. It is where the Sabbath every week is celebrated. Yes, people go to synagogue on all of these occasions, those who obviously are observant. But it is the home that is the central place. So the Seder doesn't take place in a synagogue. Some people will do it, and they'll do it because it might be easier or they want to be with a lot of people. All of that is fine. But the vast majority of Jews, the vast majority of Jewish history, have just done it in their home. And they will bring relatives, sometimes relatives they haven't seen since last Passover. They will bring friends, and they will bring people who may not have a Seder otherwise. And that is a very big deal in Passover life, to bring people into your Seder who otherwise might not have one. A person who doesn't have children, a person who doesn't have parents, a person who doesn't have a spouse, whatever it might be. So, but this is a big deal. That's why I'm doing this. If this were another Jewish holiday, I wouldn't be doing this. But it's so important to be with people at the Passover Seder. It's so different than doing it alone that I've wanted to make this possible for as many of you as possible. Next, the Passover commemorates the Exodus from Egypt. The Jews were slaves in Egypt for hundreds of years. God took them out. This is the story of that. In Judaism, there are two faith pillars. This is critical. Two faith pillars. And I didn't make any of this up. This is pure tradition. Creation and Exodus. God created the world, and God took the Israelites, the Hebrews, the Jews, whatever term you wish to use, out of Egypt. Those are the two faith bases of Judaism. If you remove either, you pretty much don't end up with Judaism. Over time, it just won't work. There's not a lot of faith stuff demanded in Judaism, but those two are pretty central. God created the world. God took the Jews out of Egypt. Now, as regards this Seder, it's not going to be the entire Haggadah. The Haggadah is a big book, and if we said the whole thing, we would lose you. So we're going to say the highlights, as it were. And so those of you who are used to every word, forgive me. On the other hand, there's going to be some amount of Hebrew, which many of you are not familiar with, so you'll have to forgive me from that aspect. We will translate, obviously, everything said in Hebrew, but a Passover Seder without Hebrew is not quite the Passover Seder that tradition has known. Okay, those are my opening comments, and my sidekick, as it were, a man with whom I have celebrated with his wife and with another couple, the Estrins, my producer and the man who came up with the idea of PragerU, Alan Estrin and his wife. I have celebrated with them. How many years is it now? 25, would you say?
No, it's actually 30.
30?
It's actually 30, 1990.
I'm blown away. And by the way, we have pictures from pre-Seder where we would line up, whether it was your home or my home, from all these years, and we've seen it's a one progression thing every year. The same group with additional people from when our kids were very, very little. Indeed, in one case, my younger boy wasn't even born. Right. So we have a tremendous history. Dr. Stephen Marmer is a professor of psychiatry at UCLA Medical School in Los Angeles, and he is in private practice as a psychiatrist in the Brentwood district in the Los Angeles area. And as I say whenever he's been on my radio show, his patients are very lucky because he is an extraordinary psychiatrist and an extraordinary man and has extraordinarily powerful values that he brings to his work. So,
and I must say, extraordinarily good friends.
That's right. And we could all write a book on the importance of friends, all of us who get together all these, both Sabbath and Passover. Okay, so we will begin here. And what you begin with, interestingly, is a recitation of the Seder, a recitation of the order that's actually in this book called the Haggadah. And they are, I'll do it in English and then Steve and I will sing it to you in Hebrew because it is sung. The order is actually sung. Number one is Kadesh, which is to sanctify. You sanctify, the blessing is over the wine. Then Urachatz, which is purification. It is the washing of the hands. Not to get clean. Your hands should be clean already. Some joker sent on the internet the listing of all of the things in the order, and every other one was the washing because of the time we're in, and everybody's supposed to wash their hands a lot. So that's number two. Number three is Karpas. It's the vegetation, which is springtime of rebirth and renewal. Then breaking of the Matzah, Yachatz. Then the most important part, this is what it's all about, is to tell the story. And I just want to say a word about that here. When a people stops telling its children its story, it will cease to be that people. My fear for America is that Americans have not told their children the story, and they're getting almost a perverse recitation of their history, and that's very dangerous for the future. One of the biggest reasons the Jews have survived for 3,000 years is this, that every year for almost 3,000 years, they have told the story to their kids. And as you will see, which is amazing, it's always the word we describing the Jews in Egypt and the Jews in the Exodus. Never they. It's always we. We were there, not they were there. Then rachza, then washing of the hands again, then the taking out of matzah, then maror, the bitter herbs, I'll explain that, then korech, the bitter and the sweet, then the meal, the shulchan orech, then the dessert, tzafun, then thanking God for the meal, barech, then hallel, the psalms of thanksgiving and praise of God, and finally nirtzah, the completion. So these are then sung, and Steve, why don't you do Kadesh Urchatz?
Kadesh Urchatz, Karpas Yachatz, Magid Rachza, Motzi Matzah, Maror Korech, Shulchan Orech, Tzafun Barech, Hallel Nirtzah.
That's one of many melodies of that, and we thank you. By the way, I do believe that this is one of the few professors of psychiatry in the world who can do that.
At least not in Israel.
Okay, right, outside of Israel, yes. That's a very good point. All right, next is the second part of this order, of this Seder, is the blessing over the wine. In Judaism, alcohol consumption has always been allowed, but it has always been for reasons of sanctification. The purpose of drinking was not to get drunk. The purpose of drinking was to celebrate the occasion, a holy occasion like the Sabbath, or a holy day like Passover. So we lift the cup. If you're with me and you have any of this, please do the same thing. And Steve, it's on page 3 in our mutual Haggadah, and I will sing it in Hebrew, and just meditate if you know no Hebrew or this is totally unfamiliar. But it's so traditional. I will be doing it in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei peri hagafen, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'am, v'romemanu mikol ha'shon, v'kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav, v'atiten lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'yahava, moadim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim l'sason, et yom chag hamatzot hazeh, Zeman Cheroteinu, Mikra Kodesh, Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim. Kivanu v'charta v'yutana kidashta mikol ha'amim, u'moadei kodshecha b'simcha u'b'sason hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanihim. Then there is another blessing added to this, which is very powerful. Many Jews are familiar with this. Blessed are you, God, who has kept us alive and brought us to this time. It is said at any great occasion in Jewish life, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu, v'kiyemanu, v'higianu lazman hazeh. By the way, 4 cups of wine are traditionally drunk on this evening. It's the most wine Jews ever drink, one hopes. And it is really to just have you know what a great night this is. And by the way, is a very interesting thing. Many of you know I'm very big on the subject of happiness. I have a happiness hour on my radio show every week. There is a law in the Torah, in the holiest of the parts of the Bible for the Jew, the Torah, the first 5 books, and it says, "You v'samachta b'chagecha," you shall be happy on your holy days, on your holidays. So this is particularly appropriate now when we're not in a happy situation with the lockdown and the virus that is traversing the world. But nevertheless, that's the law, so you have to give it a try. You have to try to be happy, at least for this holiday. All right, now, this is the pouring of the water over the hands here. And this is because it's a holy meal. And in Judaism, we even have a ritual for that. It goes 3 times. That's why there were 2 handles. 3 times over the right hand and 3 times over the left hand. All right, there we go. I might have overdone it a drop. Okay, now we continue. And we go to Karpas, the rebirth and renewal with the taking a piece of parsley, usually is what it is, dipping it in salt water, and then saying a blessing over that. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'adama. Blessed are you, God, who creates the fruit of the earth. Okay, very nice. By the way, here's the traditional dish. Can it be seen? It's all visible with the egg, with the shank bone, with the parsley, with the bitter herbs, and with the yummy part, the charoset. And I'll explain all of that. Next is I break the matzah. I have 3 matzahs. Whoever runs the Seder, and usually who's ever home it's at. So when we're at Steve Marber's home, which is frequent, he will break the matzah. In my home, was my grandfather who did, and I'll explain a great part. So you take there were 3 matzahs. The middle one you break, and you keep that, and you put the bigger part for the last part of the meal. It's called the Afikomen, which is a Greek word. And the thing is this is very common in many Jewish homes. The kids will try to steal, quote unquote, that Afikomen, that bigger part of the matzah that was just broken, from the guy who's running the Seder. And then at the end, you can't complete the Seder without that piece. So they will have a deal. He will say to the kid, all right, did you, I can't find that Afikomen, that big part of the matzah. And the kid will say, oh, I took it. So then the head of the meal will go, okay, what would you like for it? And then the kid might say, I want a bicycle. I mean, that kid's, it's a big deal. Anyway, I got my biggest gifts a Passover, not Hanukkah, not birthday. My grandfather got me a shortwave radio, which changed my life. That's how I listened to the world. One year he got me a typewriter, and that's when I started writing. So I have the very fondest memories of the deal with my grandfather of giving him that matzah back and getting a great gift. Steve, did you steal the Afikomen in your house?
No. What happened in our house was that my father would hide it, and then we would go looking for it all over the house, and whichever one of us found it made the same deal. I'll give it back to you if you...
Okay, so he hid it, you had to find it.
Right.
And in our case, we had to take it.
Right.
I get it. So did you find it, or did a sibling? Who found it?
Well, it's embarrassing to say, but I found it about 7 years in a row, and then I had to retire because my brother and sister couldn't stand it. They couldn't stand it. But the gifts that I got were little things like a keychain or a T-shirt or something like that. And then when my sister found it, she got like $20 or something like that. So it was really...
she made up for the 7 years.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. 7 years of feast and then famine.
That is so explain is perfect to have if my cohort's going to be a psychiatrist. So I understood the psychology was to keep the kids up all night. Is that how you read it?
Yes, it's to keep them excited, or if they have somewhat fallen asleep as a result of eating the meal and having the alkaline tide that you get when you get sleepy after a meal. It was to wake them up and get them excited at least about the end of the Seder, so that and it would also be a great adventure. But there's another, if I may give a different, an additional interpretation. It's that we want the next generation always to be looking for what we have offered them. We want them to continue to be looking for the Jewish celebrations and the role of the meaning of Passover in their lives. So that's another thing that I like about it.
But the practical element was keep them awake.
Practical element, definitely.
Yeah.
Keep them awake, keep them excited, and that way they'll sit through it.
All right, that's fantastic. Okay. By the way, in your memories of your childhood, is the Seder the best Jewish memory?
No question about it. It was the highlight of the year, and somehow or other, my parents made it seem like a great privilege. We never felt that we were deprived of bread and pasta and all the other things. We always felt, oh my goodness, for a whole week we get to eat all this special food. And it was just considered the most fun. We had my grandparents over, we had all kinds of other people over. But let me tell you a short story here about the way my father conducted the Seder. In those days, we had a first Seder with the family on the first night. And then the second night, he would always invite, he was a doctor in a hospital, and he would always invite the non-Jewish nurses and other personnel to come to the Seder to acquaint them with Judaism. And it went back to a time when he was an intern, and he was on call the day after Yom Kippur. So he came back having fasted all day, as is required for an observant person on Yom Kippur, and no one had saved him any food. And so he couldn't break the fast until the next morning, so he had an additional 10 or so hours of fasting. And the reason was because nobody understood Judaism. So he made it one of his missions to acquaint all of his co-workers who were not Jewish with Jewish customs, and it quickly passed to me to be the interpreter to help explain to them what was going on. So I loved it.
Wow. I'm thinking in my own life, it's a toss-up. I really loved the Friday night Shabbat meal. That was a highlight. But I had the same thing. The Seder, first of all, you saw relatives you never saw otherwise. And I had one uncle who was completely non-religious. He was a secular Jew, but he came for this because even secular Jews tend to go to somebody for a Seder. And it was hilarious. It was like clockwork. The first half of the meal, he got very tired of us going through the ceremonies. And he would go, Hilda, that's my mother's name. It was really her uncle. And he'd go, Hilda, when are we eating? And he would, just every so often, just protest how long we were talking or praying. Then he'd eat, and then after that, he went into the living room, which was attached to the dining room, and he'd go, Hilda, give me Tums. So half the meal, half the Seder, he was complaining about not eating, and half the meal he was complaining for having eaten too much. But these are great memories. That's the stuff of childhood. That's wonderful. All right. Yeah.
If I may tell another quick one, my grandparents one time, we asked them, what was it like in Russia when you were kids? And they went into a long explanation. I'll abbreviate the story. And they talked about how rough it was and how they escaped from Russia, came to America, and all their successes and all their failures, living through the Depression. And it was just an amazing moment for all of us grandchildren to hear their story. These are the things that you can't, they're priceless.
That's exactly right. And it's a continuity of generations. I mean, when you think about it, outside of a Seder type atmosphere, I mean, it's obvious grandparents could tell grandchildren their stories, and many do, but this is the perfect opportunity for such quote unquote storytelling. It's invaluable. All right, page 5. So this is so old, the prayer here. It's in Aramaic. The rest of the Haggadah is in Hebrew. This is in Aramaic. That's how old it is. Halach ma'anya di achalu avhatana bi'ara di Mitzrayim. This is the bread of affliction, as it's called, that our parents ate in the land of Egypt. Kol dichvin yetevi echol. All those in need should come and eat. And we all took this seriously, of inviting people who otherwise would not have a Seder. That's basically what we're doing tonight, in effect. So that's a very famous part of the prayer. Okay, let's move on here and to the most famous part, and that is the youngest person there. And I would say it starts at 4 or 5. I mean, really young. I was the youngest of the 2 brothers, so I remember singing this. These are the famous, what are called the 4 questions. And they are, why is this night different from every other night? That's how it begins. And other nights we eat all sorts of things, but tonight we only eat this, and other nights we do this. It's 4 questions. Judaism is built on questions and answers, questions and answers. And it starts here, and it's sung this way, the Manish Tana. And I don't know if you saw what I sent you, Steve. The
Yes,
Israel
it was
Philharmonic, I got the chills. I'm sure you did.
I did.
One of the greatest orchestras in the world, the Israel Philharmonic, knowing that, of course, Israelis are in isolation like we are. They got members of their orchestras in their homes to play this on some of the greatest instrumentalists in the world to play this. And very few of them are religious as such, but it's so basic to Israeli culture. Everyone knows the melody. Everybody knows what the 4 questions are. So I don't have to sing it now, but it is the basis of the evening. The kid asks, what is this about? And the rest of the Seder is to answer that kid's questions. Manishtana halayla hazeh. Manishtana halayla hazeh. Mikol haleilot. You could take it on. I'm not a singer.
Mikol halelot, shebachol halelot, anu ochlin chametz umatzah, chametz umatzah, halayla hazeh, kulo matzah, halayla hazeh, kulo matzah.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. That was beautifully
that's
done.
enough.
Yeah, so that's the way many of you with any background in Judaism would have certainly have heard that. Okay, now this is a great part. This is, see, in Jewish homes, the Seder is a discussion period. I mean, you should eat a little before the Seder because there's so much time devoted to discussing themes. So here's an example. This is from the Haggadah. None of this has been made up by either Steve Marmer or myself. So on page 7, and here's the traditional one. So I'm going to look here, page 74. So there it says here that the Torah mentions that you should tell your children. There are 4 times the Torah says tell your children about the Exodus. It's very important. It's brilliant, the Torah. You must teach your kids what you're about. If I put it in American terms, as I said earlier, American parents forgot to tell their kids what America is about. So kids don't know. This is one of the greatest lessons of this tradition. So here, it's why does it have, so they did a brilliant thing. The rabbis who made this up, this Haggadah, almost 2,000 years ago, they said, well, if it's 4 times listed to tell your children about the Exodus, there must be 4 types of children that you should talk to. And sure enough, there are. There is the wise child, the wicked child, the simple child and the child who doesn't even know how to ask. And it then gives you a way to answer their questions. Now, without going through it all, and it's just fascinating, I wondered as a kid, why is there no good child? Wise, wicked, simple, and doesn't know how to ask. Where's the good child? It only was in my adult life that I realized the wise child is the good child because you can't be good without wisdom. You can have all the good intentions in the world, but if you're a fool, you'll only end up doing bad stuff. I think this is as relevant as a concept could be for our time. That's what we have not given over, wisdom. We've given knowledge, but we haven't given wisdom. So those are the 4 types of children. It shows that they would ask a different question, and this is the way the parent treats that question. That was also, this is 2,000 years ago. I mean, that's Dr. Marmer, psychiatrist. That I have to believe is impressive, that they would tell you 2,000 years ago, your children are not all the same.
Absolutely. We've talked for 30 years about the meaning of all of this and its complexity, and we've never run out of interpretations. But the sheer psychological wisdom of these spiritual geniuses is beyond belief. It's just so impressive.
Yep. You have to know you can't raise every kid. They're not cookie cutters, your kids. That was a great lesson here. We go to page 9. Obviously, I'm telling that for Steve Marmer. None of you have the same one that I have. And we say here, Avadim hayinu lefaro b'mitzrayim. We, see, I told you, it's all we. It's never once does it say they. We were slaves for Pharaoh in Egypt. That's what it says in the Hebrew. I wish Americans would say that. In 1776, we rebelled and made America. We. That you have to attach yourself to your past. It's not they, it's we. And God took us out of there. Vayotzienu Adonai Eloheinu misham biyad chazaka u'bizro netiyah, with a strong hand and an extended arm. This is the beginning of telling the story to kids. Hey, God took us out of Egypt. By the way, I know, of course, Dr. Marmer knows this. Do you know whose name doesn't appear in this Haggadah, except only once because he's in a prayer? Moses doesn't appear in the Haggadah because Moses did not take the Jews out of Egypt. God did. It's an amazing thing. It's like telling the story, again, in American terms. It's like telling the story of the American Revolution and never mentioning George Washington. These are just powerful ideas. All right, let me go into the traditional. Let's see if I want to read to you that. Yes. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord our God took us out from there with a strong hand and with an outstretched arm. And had the Holy One, blessed be He, that's God, not taken our fathers out of Egypt, then we, our children, and our children's children would have remained subjugated to Pharaoh in Egypt. Now comes a very powerful line which we have gone over all of our lives. And even if we were all wise, and all of us had great understanding, all of us were elders, all of us versed in the knowledge of the Torah, we would still be obligated to discuss the Exodus from Egypt. And every individual who elaborates in the retelling of the Exodus is to be considered praiseworthy. It doesn't matter how much you know, how brilliant you are, you've got to tell the story anyway. Any thoughts, Steve?
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, the serious thought is that it has so many layers, and we've learned each year the Seder is the same, but it's different as we find new angles on it. And they say that nobody's exempt from this. It doesn't matter what kind of a big shot you are. You could be the world's most famous anything. This is it. The action of telling it and transmitting it to the next generation is important. Now, the funny thing is that when my mother, your uncle, used to want to know when the food was coming, my mother would want to know how much longer we were going to talk, and I would quote this. But Rabban Gamliel says, indeed, to dwell on it is to be accounted praiseworthy, and that would shut her up because,
of course, right.
It was the one time of the year when my parents couldn't tell me to stop talking.
Because the Haggadah had said, the more you talk about it, the more praiseworthy.
That's right.
Yeah, you got the green light from
I got the
2,000
green
years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. But I love the fact that she had no answer.
Oh no, she capitulated because she recognized the validity of it.
Yeah, because it wasn't you, Steve. It was Judaism telling her.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly. All right. So now, before we go on in the one you and I have, a very powerful paragraph in the Haggadah. V'hi she'amda lavotenu v'lanu shelo echad bilvad amad aleinu lechalotenu. Ela shebechol dor vador umdim aleinu lechalotenu v'hakadosh baruch hu matzilenu mi'adam. And he who stood with our forefathers and us, it wasn't only once that somebody arose to annihilate us. And then comes this amazing phrase that every knowledgeable Jew is aware of. But in every generation, somebody arises to annihilate us. Not to oppress us, not to subjugate us, not to enslave us, to annihilate us. And the Holy One, blessed be He, saves us from their hands. I know Steve knows this well, because when I was a kid, and I was a thoughtful kid, and I remember in high school thinking, I don't agree with the rabbis who wrote this. I don't think that in our generation, for example, somebody wants to annihilate us. The Germans just did that with the Holocaust, and this is only a few years after the Holocaust, and maybe 10 years, 15 years later, and 15 years later. And I thought, no, nobody's going to want to annihilate us now. The world has learned how horrible that is. And I was wrong. I was just wrong. There is always, every generation, somebody wants to annihilate Jews. That's why anti-Semitism, something I know a lot about, I've written a book on it, anti-Semitism is unique of all the world's hatreds because only anti-Semitism is annihilationist. It's not a matter of subjugating the Jews, or again, as I said, or oppressing them. It's annihilating them. Iran wants to annihilate Israel. They say it. So they were right 2,000 years ago. In every generation, somebody wants to annihilate us. Now, it then says, but God saves us. Now, obviously, God didn't save the Jews in the Holocaust. But it doesn't say God saves every Jew. It says God saves the Jewish people. And with all the attempts to annihilate the Jews, well, we're still around. Thoughts on that, Steve?
It's so profound. So many of us, like you, I thought, it could never happen again, but then it is happening again. And it's endless. And when I think that they have gone by the wayside and we're still here, for 3,000 years, people have been celebrating this holiday. For 2,000 years in this exact form with the Seder, when it was invented after the destruction of the temple. And so it's a miracle, and it's almost enough to make a non-believer believe, because we're still here, and we'd only be here with God's help.
That's our belief, certainly. I don't know any other way too. I agree. All right, I'm going to continue here with the traditional, we have an abbreviated one on our separate sheets. This is the traditional one here. So I'm going to read something here. So again, all of this is answering the kids' questions in effect. But of course, this is for adults too. And here's an example. So the Egyptians dealt cruelly with us and made us suffer and put hard work on us. So this is just a way of answering what happened. And the Egyptians dealt cruelly with us. And then it gives the verse in the book of Exodus where Pharaoh said, we better get rid of these people. And they put taskmasters over us. And they gave us hard work. And then what happened? After all the recital of the suffering of slaves, then in the Haggadah we go. And it says, and the Lord took us out of Egypt. Now listen, this is really powerful. Not through an angel, and not through a seraph, and not through a messenger. Instead, God in his own glory, and he alone. And it then quotes the Torah text, the Bible text. And I will pass through the land of Egypt, and I will smite every firstborn, and I will carry out judgment. There are so many reasons this is important, but one of them is because people totally understandably ask, well, why was it right when God brought the plagues on Egypt to force Pharaoh to let the Jews out about the smiting, excuse me, the smiting of the firstborn. And it's very important. God did not tell any Israelite to kill one Egyptian. God will do it. I will take this moral responsibility. I will not have you do any of the quote unquote, if you would, dirty work. You ever read on why God alone did it, why that's important?
Well, I think that your point is that we didn't have blood on our hands, but also to show that he's the ultimate boss. He is the giver of life and the taker of life. And he is superior to all of the Egyptian gods, and there's no doubt about it.
And by the way, as we will see when we get to the plagues, I won't go through it now. It is all in my commentary on Exodus in my book, The Rational Bible. A long commentary to make that book clear. I show how every one of the plagues was against an Egyptian god, beginning with blood, which was the Nile was turned into blood, and the Nile was one of the chief gods of the Egyptians. The sun was the chief god, and that was the penultimate plague. That was the next to last plague. Darkness. Look at that. The one true God of the universe can make the Egyptian god dark. This is all so profound, but very few people know how profound it is, which is why this is so important. The most famous song of the Passover Seder is Dayenu, which means, oh, that would be enough. So, for example, if God took us out of Egypt, that would be enough. If he had not split the sea, that would be enough. If he had given us manna 40 years in the desert, that would be enough. Dayenu means that would be enough for us. So I'll sing this one and just a few of the verses. And you at home should sing along anytime you know any of these melodies. Yeah.
Are we going to do the plagues? Are we going to go through the
Yes,
plagues
but
before Dayenu or after?
I would, but the order. Yeah, did I miss? Yeah, you know what? 1 second. Where are the plagues? What page is the
12.
plagues?
12.
That's what I missed it. Okay,
Yeah.
yes, we should do the plagues first. I agree with that. Now, here's a very powerful tradition. This is every Jewish home does this. You dip usually your pinky into your wine, which is the sign of your gladness. But you take a drop out for each plague because it teaches the Jew at the Seder, still in all, the Egyptians were people. So we take a little of our joy out every time we mention one of these plagues. And the lesson is so enormous that after all of this recitation of how the Egyptians made us suffer, still in all, we're not all that celebratory. We're taking away from the celebration in order to identify with their suffering too. You did that in your home, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, so I'll tell you what we'll do. I will, why don't I do, I'll recite it, Steve, because this is the tradition. You recite the 10 plagues. I'll do one, and then you do it in English, and so on, okay?
Yeah, got it.
All right. Dam.
Blood.
Tzvaradea.
Frogs.
Kinim.
Lice.
Arov.
Beasts.
Dever.
Blight.
Shechin.
Boils.
Barad.
Hail.
Arbe.
Locusts.
Choshech.
Darkness.
Makat bechorot.
Death of the firstborn.
And that's what is done at every Seder. That is powerful. Okay, so then we're up to the Dayenu. And everybody, all of you at home who know this, sing along with me. And I'm only concerned is, could we sing together and it'll sound okay, or
We'll give it a
wanna
try.
alter
Let's
it?
give it a
All
try,
right.
and Reed will fix it.
All righty. Die, die, yenu, die, die, yenu, die, die, yenu, die, yenu, die, yenu,
die, yenu, die,
die, die, yenu, die, die, yenu, die, die, yenu, die, yenu, die, yenu. All right, we'll leave it for now. But that's the most traditional of all the memories. It would be enough for us. Okay, we now move to 15, to the actual, the heart of the Seder in terms of all of the things that you see here. And that is Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. Rabbi Gamliel, the first century sage, so it's what I'm talking about, 2,000 years ago, who compiled the Haggadah, taught, those who have not explained these three things during the Seder have not fulfilled their obligation. Pesach. Want to read that one, Steve?
Pesach, when the great temple of Jerusalem was still in existence, our ancestors ate a special sacrificial offering called the Pesach. The word Pesach means to pass over. The offering was eaten as a symbol that God passed over the houses of the Israelites, as the Torah teaches, "You shall say, this is the Pesach offering which we offer to God, because God passed over the houses of the Israelites when he destroyed the Egyptians, but our homes God saved."
Matzah. Why do we eat matzah? To remember that even before our ancestors' dough had time to rise, God was revealed to them and saved them, as the Torah teaches, and they baked the dough which they had brought from Egypt into matzah. That's unleavened bread. That's the famous unleavened bread. It somewhat tastes like cardboard, but Jews get used to it. So there's no bread or anything that is made from yeast, anything that rises for these 7 days or 8 days, depending on what a Jew observes, of Passover. No bread is the most famous part. By the way, I do believe there's another reason. The Egyptians generally are credited with having invented bread. And so bread represented Egypt. And the need to get Jews away from Egyptian religion and values, which were very death-oriented, is a major way of understanding many Torah laws, including this one. You left Egypt, you will also leave their culture. Their culture was bread-centered. You will not have bread. So that was part of it too. And maror, Steve, bitter herbs?
Maror. Why do we eat bitter herbs? To remember that the Egyptians embittered the lives of our ancestors with hard labor in mortar and brick and in every manner of drudgery in the field, and worked them ruthlessly in all their labor.
Now, that's it's an interesting aspect here of the Haggadah and the Seder. Judaism is a very, very physical religion because we are physical beings. So you want to know what it was like to be a slave? Here, have something bitter, and it is bitter. You want to have represent whatever you want to represent. The unleavened bread, you will continue forever to have this unleavened bread, just like they did. We're living in effect in some ways like they did. That is a part of it. All righty, let's see here. You know what? Let's on 16, Steve.
Yes?
It's so appropriate for the time we're living in now with the isolation. Therefore, let us rejoice at the miracle of our liberation and sing unto God who brought us from slavery to freedom, from despair to joy. That's particularly appropriate now. From mourning to celebration, from darkness to light, from enslavement to redemption. How fitting for the time we're in. Next, we have the next. I do grape juice instead of wine. I don't react well to alcohol. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, in other words, I don't have a moral problem with it. I'm not addicted. I couldn't be. The amount of alcohol I've drunk in my entire life would not suffice for one day in an addict's life. I just don't. I get a headache. So I do grape juice instead. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher ga'alanu ve'ga'alat avotenu mimitzrayim v'higiyanu lalayla hazeh le'echol bo matzah u'maror kein Adonai Eloheinu ve'elohei avotenu yagiyenu lemoadim v'liregalim acherim haba'im nikratenu l'shalom smechim b'binyan irecha v'sasim ba'avodatecha v'nodel lecha shir chadash al ge'ulatenu v'al pedut nafshenu Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Let's do the bracha together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine.
Do we have time? Do we have time, or shall we skip B'tzeit Yisrael?
Yes, I did. I do have that listed as. I'm going to have you sing it. So,
okay, and then we'll do the duet at the end, like we always do.
Yes. So, where is the page of that?
It's
here?
at the top of.
Yes,
it's at the top of 17.
That's correct.
In our
I missed
book.
it. Absolutely.
That's okay.
So take it away. Go ahead. This is what is sung at this time.
It's from the book of Psalms.
Psalm 114.
B'tzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am loez. B'tzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am loez. Hayta Yehuda lekodsho, Yisrael mamshalotav. Hayam rav ayanos, Hayarden yisov leachor. Heharim rakadu chelim, Givaot kivnei tzon.
Malecha hayam,
Kitahanus, Hayarden,
Tisov
leachor,
Heharim, Tirkedu che'elim, Gevaot,
Gevaot,
Kivnei kivnei tzon
Kivnei tzon.
milifnei
Milifnei.
Adon chuli haaretz
Adon chuli haaretz.
milifnei
Milifnei.
Eloha Yaakov
Eloha Yaakov.
hahofchi hatzur
Hachofi hatzur.
Agahamahayim
Hagamayim.
Chalahamish
Halamish.
Lemaino mahayim.
Lemaino mahayim.
That
I
was a
love doing
beautiful
that.
psalm, Psalm 114, and that was a very old melody from my childhood. And now let's see, we go.
To the second
let's
washing of the hands.
That's right. So we're on 18, the two of us. So the second washing of the hands, this time, however, gets the blessing over the washing of the hands. There are a lot of blessings in Judaism. So here we go. Again, 3 on each. Okay. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על נטילת ידיים.
Amen.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המוציא לחם מן הארץ.
Amen.
That was the blessing over the matzah.
Well, over bread, over anything that comes
over any-
forth
right.
from the earth. And now we have a special one for the matzah as well.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על אכילת מצה.
Amen.
God who has commanded us about the eating of matzah, which I should have said together with the other one. Now we eat maror, and this is supposed to be strong, and I don't know if my wife got a strong one this year. Not easy to shop this year, and the maror stocks are low. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, Asher Kiddushanu mitzvotav, who has sanctified us with the commandments, v'tzivanu, and commanded us al achilat maror, to eat maror.
Amen.
Not too strong.
Yuck.
That is
Yuck.
not too strong, I have to say. The best, I'll tell you, I don't know if it's allowed, but wasabi is about as strong as it gets, in my opinion. Then, the inventor, yeah, thank you. The inventor of the sandwich is not, what is it? The Earl of Sandwich or the Lord of Sandwich? What was it?
Right. The Earl of
was not.
Sandwich.
Yeah, it was actually Hillel, the sage in the Talmud. He made the sandwich of maror and the
Charoset.
well, actually, this is yes. All right, so the charoset is sort of the mortar, represents the mortar of the bricks. That's yummy. This is people make it's all different sweet fruit. But and zecher lemikdash ki Hillel ken asa Hillel bizman shebeit hamikdash haya kayam haya korech Pesach Matzah umaror vochel biyachad lekayem ma shene'amar hamatzot u'marim yochlu. Okay. Now, at this point, it is time to have the meal. But obviously, if I had the meal, first of all, you don't want to watch me eat. Secondly, I want you to have all the time you want to eat. So we're going to do the stuff that comes after the meal as well. Let's go to page 22. All right. So the first thing is the third cup of wine. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen.
Amen.
All right. Now we go from there to Elijah's cup. Ooh, I didn't fill Elijah's cup. Too bad. I knew I'd missed something. Normally there's a cup saved for Elijah the prophet, and that's filled to the top with wine. And the hope is that he will come and announce the arrival of the Messiah, of the Mashiach. And there's a very solemn prayer said at that time that may God take out his wrath on those, on evil nations, which frankly, I'm in agreement with.
Me too.
Good.
It's never bothered me.
Yeah, never exactly. It does bother some modern Jews, that prayer, but I don't understand. I mean, if God is just, then wouldn't we want him to take his wrath out against the evil? I don't quite get that. All right, now let's go. Okay, so there's actually the fourth cup. Then there's Hillel. Well, Hallel on 178. I want to sing something.
Can we sing Eliyahu Hanavi?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Is it on here?
Yes, it's at the bottom of 23.
Bottom of 23. Okay, take it away.
Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Bimhera veyamenu yavo eleinu Himashiach ben David, Himashiach ben David. I have a little story to tell about this. I used to sing this to our older daughter as a lullaby, and it worked. The trouble is that every time we would sing it at Passover, she would start to fall asleep.
Oh, wow. It really worked.
It was really cute,
That is adorable. Now, let me see. Oh, yes, I knew I wanted to do something here. So at this point, a bunch of psalms are sung, psalms of praise of God, but I wanted to bring one to your attention, those of you who are watching this, because I have a great story about it. And I need to, let's see, okay, not that. One moment, folks. Let's see. I want to do the one with their Atzabehem Kesef V'Zahav. I want to tell my Russia story. Okay, here it is, yeah. So one of this you'll love this, folks. And you can see this reenacted incredibly by a kid acting as the younger me when I was in the Soviet Union at the age of 20 or 21. And so this is the story. So this is one of the Psalms here. Not us, Lord, but to your name give honor, your kindness, and so on. And then it says, their idols are of silver and gold, the product of human hands. They have mouths, but cannot speak. They have eyes, but cannot see. They have ears, but cannot hear. They have noses, but cannot smell. Their hands cannot feel, their feet cannot walk. They can make no sound with their throats. Like them should be their makers, everyone who trusts in them. So I was sent by Israel at the age of 21 into the Soviet Union for a lot of reasons. The biggest ones were that I was a Jewish kid and I knew Russian and Hebrew. So that I was like the ideal candidate to go, to smuggle in religious items to Jews in the Soviet Union and to smuggle out names of Jews who wanted to leave. So it was a little dangerous, but it was also obviously life-changing because I lived for a month in a totalitarian state and met a lot of people who told me a lot of things. So in Moscow, in my hotel room, I was always a character. I mean, you know, you're born a character. It's like your shoe size. You're just given it. So I would get up in the morning in my hotel room and I would go to the wall and I would say to the wall, knowing there were microphones hidden in the room, and I'd say in Russian to them, "Hey, dobry utro, good morning." How'd you sleep? This is Dennis checking in. And then I would sing this song that their idols cannot walk and their idols do not hear or smell or see. Because I was in a world of idols. You know, there was a Lenin statue every other block. And I had no idea. They probably had no idea what I was singing and thought I was out of my mind. But it kept me sane, singing this particular psalm to the walls. So anyway, you could all see it reenacted in the movie No Safe Spaces. It's at nosafespaces.com. This is not an ad. It's just you would love to see it. Okay.
Dennis, before you go on, I want everyone to know the incredible impact of your visits, your visit to the Soviet Union, by telling the story of how when the Estrins and the Marmers and the Pragers were in St. Petersburg and we went to the synagogue, we were accompanied by a really lovely young Chabad rabbi. And you were recalling that I don't know how many decades earlier you had been there, and an elderly man came up to us and sort of crouching with his eyes squinting, looked at you and looked closely at your face and said, "I think I know you. Weren't you here 35 years ago? Aren't you the American Jew who came and talked to us?" And, you know, the skin, the hair on the back of my neck, and I'm sure all of us, just rose at the recognition of the impact of those visits.
I have
to
the
Soviet
chills
Union.
when you tell the story.
Yeah,
That he recognized me 35 years later.
yeah,
But I knew then, this was it's now St. Petersburg, was Leningrad then. And when I went into the synagogue, of course I was the only foreign Jew there. Many of them had never seen a foreign Jew. And they were told by the Soviets that Judaism was dead all over the world because they wanted religion dead. I was 21 years old and they said to me, can you participate and lead the prayers? And I'm sure they expected me to say, "Gee, no, I don't know. I don't even know Hebrew." And I said, "Yeah, I'll be happy to." And I went up there, and for Jews who know this, I recited the Haftorah, the prophetic reading of that week of Sabbath. And it was so quiet. What they realized was they had been lied to, that in fact the Jews were alive and well outside of the Soviet Union. That this kid from America could do this, could just get up there and read in Hebrew the prophets and chant it properly. This changed their lives. And the proof, as you just said, is this man remembered it from 35 years before. And I was blown away myself. Yeah, it was quite something. There are a bunch of songs at the end of the Seder that are just terrific. So on page 25 is one of the famous ones. It's again, it's devoted to kids, the Seder, but adults love it too. But it's a song. Who knows one? Who knows two? Who knows three? Who knows four? So what is one? One is God. What is two? Two are the tablets, right? Two are the tablets that Moses brought down. What is three? Three are the patriarchs. What is four? Four are the matriarchs. And it continues that. What is five? Five are the 5 books of the Torah. And it goes all the way up to 13, which is bar mitzvah. So you sing this whole thing, and it's done in Hebrew and in English, and I'm sure in France it's done in French and in Hebrew. And that's the song that's sung then. So we do it in English, and let's try to give it a try here for the beginning.
Should we do 1 and 2 and then skip to 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or 1 and 2 even. It's just fun.
Okay. Go for it, Dennis.
All right. Who knows 1?
I know 1.
One is Hashem.
One is Hashem.
One is Hashem in the heaven and the earth. So that's Hashem is the Hebrew for God. And then it's a great melody which continues. Who knows 2?
I know 2. 2 are the tablets that Moshe brought. And 1 is Hashem.
One is Hashem.
One is Hashem.
In the heavens and the earth. And then it just goes on, and it's just, it's fantastic. These melodies are terrific. It cracks the kids up. It cracks the adults up. And you learn a lot. Every number has a significance. The next one is one of the most famous. It's about, it's called Adir Hu on page 27. Wait, did we have one on 26?
Nope.
No, that's 27, right?
Right.
So why don't you sing it?
Adir Hu, Yivne Veto Bekarov, Bimhera, Biyamenu Bekarov, El Bnei, Bnei Beto Bekarov.
I'll do the next one.
Okay.
Bachur Hu, Gadol Hu, Dagul Hu, Yivne Beito Bekarov, Bimhera, Biyamenu Bekarov, El Bnei, Bnei Beitcha Bekarov. This is about how God is great and may his house be soon rebuilt. And that goes on for quite a while, and it's a very famous melody.
And they cover, it goes in what they call alphabetical order, with each letter of the Hebrew alphabet in sequence describing one of God's attributes.
Then there is another one about how God, again, it's a beautiful to praise God. And I have a melody that Steve fell in love with over the course of our decades of doing the Seders together. And I'll sing it. I'll sing the beginning for you. It's really, it's always touched me, this melody. Ki lo na'eh,
Ki lo na'eh,
ki lo ya'eh,
Ki lo ya'eh,
Ki lo ya'eh, adir bimlucha. Adir bimlucha, bachur kalacha, gedudav yomru lo, lecha ulecha, lecha ki lecha, lecha aflecha, lecha Adonai ha-mamlacha, ki lo na'eh,
Ki lo na'eh,
ki lo ya'eh,
Ki lo ya'eh.
ki lo ya'eh, dagul bimlucha. And then it just continues in that way, and it's truly, it's a melody that touches your heart, especially as you know it over time. And then the Seder ends with a very funny, bizarre one about. It's called One Kid. That is as in kid as in goat, just one kid. You want to. So one kid, just one kid. My father bought for 2 zuzim. One kid, just one kid. Then came a cat and ate the kid that my father bought for 2 zuzim. Then a dog, a stick, a fire, the water, an axe. They all consumed the other one until finally at the very end, God consumes them all.
I've always thought that this is a historical review of all of our persecutions. We the Jewish people are the one little kid, and the 2 zuzim are the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments.
That's right.
But then one empire after another. First the Assyrians, and then the Babylonians, and then the Persians, and then the Greeks, and then the Romans, and so forth, until finally God makes peace.
That's a good read. Why don't you give the traditional melody? I think there is only one anyway. Take it away.
Haggadah, Haggadah, my father bought for two zuzim. Haggadah, Haggadah. And then we would have fun making animal noises. Then came the cat, meow, that ate the kid, bah. My father bought for two zuzim, and so forth. Until we finally, I'm renowned among our group when we come to the ox, and I go, then came the ox.
That has brought us more joy over 30 years than I can actually measure. I told my younger son that we would be doing this, and he asked, will you be making the ox sound?
Okay, we can start with that. Then came the ox that drank the water, gurgle, 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 that quenched the fire, sizzle, 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 that burned the stick, wham, that beat the dog, ruff, 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 that bit the cat, meow, that ate the kid, bah. My father bought for two zuzim. And then by the time we've had 4 cups of wine or 3, we've got it all a little bit mixed up, and we make mistakes, and the kids laugh.
This, as I told our synagogue group, I feel like I'm on this Jewish train that started on the rails about 3,000 years ago. And with all the problems right now, and they're severe economically and in other ways, obviously. This island of this Seder, we're not really living, at this moment. We're living 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. And I think it induces some peace when you can somehow realize you're part of something so much larger than yourself. Do you feel that?
Oh, no question about it. The idea that we're doing the same thing, passing to the next generation what was passed to us, and it's a mystical, spiritual, but psychological, but I think also real thing. And I feel anchored to something that helps stabilize me when the boat is rocking in the current age.
Anchored, that's the key. Anchored, that's right. That's what it's given us, this anchor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope for all of you this has been meaningful. If it's your 50th Seder or your first, to Steve and I and millions of others, this is a central part of our life. And it was important for me to try to bring this to you who, most of you who don't have one because of the nature of things going on now. I hope that a year from now, people are healthy, people are back to work, and people are able, without any ambivalence or ambiguity, to just have a truly happy holiday. But even in a dark time, this has to be celebrated. This is not comparable in its darkness, obviously, to the concentration camps of the Holocaust. But even there, Jews tried to have whatever they could to mimic a Seder. And I understand that. It transports you back to the Exodus. I will add, if I may, that if you really want to know what all this is about, I've written a commentary on Exodus called The Rational Bible. I'm not trying to sell you a book. Nobody writes a Bible commentary to make a lot of money. But obviously, this means a lot to me. It means a lot to Dr. Marmer
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's clear. And we are very lucky that we found each other and our cohort Alanestrin and our wives. And it's been an incredible richness in our lives. A combination of God and friends is a pretty powerful combination. I wish you all God and friends, because that is exactly what you probably most need at this time. My friend is Dr. Stephen Marmer, Professor of Psychiatry at UCLA. I'm Dennis Prager of Prager University and of my radio show, and it has been an honor to be with you. God bless you, and goodbye.
Thank you, Dennis. Good night.